The Bardstown City Council working session, June 2nd, 2015, is in session.
Radio.
Okay, I guess number one on the agenda for the working session is the council updates. That'll be the Palcom study updates, paint class. Mr. Combs, I guess you are up, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much. Okay, if I stand?
Oh, sure, go right ahead.
Just to give you a little background on the project that we've had, early communications with Larry Green was last August, September, about looking at the city's pay classification plan. And I forwarded a proposal to Larry in September, basically heard back from him in late October. And it's a project that we had hoped to finish a lot sooner than we did, but I'd rather err on the side of time every time. And that's basically what's happened here. In dealing with the pay classification plan, we basically to address the city's job descriptions and the position and grade. And we've met with each department head at least once or twice, all the way through the process. You got their input. But in addition to that, the update, revise, add, remove position descriptions, the first thing we did. Then after we got that part of it done, on the compensation side, we looked at the market survey. I looked at internal equity, equal pay for equal work, and then career ladders. Identify some career ladders for especially lower level positions, employees with lower level positions would have some adjustments, such as increasing maintenance worker, maintenance operator 1, 2, 3, and so forth, with increments of experience. In addition to that, the council had requested to look at two different areas. They said the actual salary scale had too many grades, and what we're recommending now, the number of grades have been reduced from 55 to 30. And the council wanted to look at, they said the range within each grade was too wide. Currently, the range is 70% between the minimum and maximum within each salary range. What we're recommending to you is going to be 50%. Okay, Larry, and what Larry's going to give you would be our recommended classification or pay classification plan. The first couple pages, three pages, are going to give you the position description, the position title, you'll find those by department, and then the grade, the recommended grades to the right. The fourth sheet or fifth sheet, the last sheet, would be the actual salary scale, which would include the 30 grades plus the minimum maximum. So any employee in a position that's assigned to a particular grade must be paid between the minimum and maximum of that particular grade. Now, let's go ahead, Larry, with the next one. Okay. What I'm giving you now is the list. You see the proposed grade to the left and the class title, the current grade salary range, current salary range for that position, and the proposed salary range for that position, and then the current salary of the incumbent in that position, and then any action necessary. Just to give you a summary on that, it would cost $43,000 there's 26 actual employees that are under the recommended minimum. 26 actual employees. By the way, there's one employee who is over the maximum. So 26 under. It would cost $43,673 to bring those 26 employees up to at least the minimum of the recommended salary range. And that's actually low, because it had been a long time since the city had actually gone through a comprehensive review of their pay classification plan. And I think some of the actions last year, year before last, with the previous administration, actually kept these numbers low because there are some increases. There's some increases at those times. Without those increases, the numbers would be a lot higher. Is what I'm trying to say. But I think we're okay. The ranges, the increases that were given at those times, that fit right into the compensation schedule that we're recommending. And so I have no issues with that. No issues with that at all. Larry, you don't have any, do you? Any issues with?
The 26 employees that you're talking about, those were the ones that didn't get that last big pay increase.
Yeah, they did not get an increase, but what we did is we looked at the positions and we looked at, where should this position be in the salary scale? And the first thing we do is we look at that, and we do that by way of market survey, and then what we did here is Larry contacted Kentucky League of Cities and got a ton of information from, in other words, KLC doesn't salary survey each year. And then they summarize it and send it out where the information is really not useful. Larry went to them and got the actual data, and we use the actual data in looking at the, in making comparisons, and I think that worked out really well. So what you see now in your, what you see is the all departments, and and Larry has sent this information to each of the individual departments. We had some communication back and forth with that.
Paul, just to go back a little bit on what you were saying, that if you recall, one of the things that prompted this is we had in a particular department in the electric department, they had done a study themselves that showed that they were that we were not paying the market amount, and we had some employees who were thinking about leaving and had offers elsewhere. And so we had a choice then of either correcting that situation at the time, and then also there were some other departments that then asked to have their pay looked at. So we decided to do this study, but in the interim, the former administration worked with about half the departments and raised them up separate from this. So that's why when you look through here, you'll see some departments that had virtually no changes. That's because those were already taken care of last year. Just a little background.
Can we go ahead to
Well, and it might be a good time to entertain questions on the rest of it, because that's kind of, or whatever you think, that way you can ask questions about that.
This is, any questions you have on that?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, sure.
Where you indicated proposal, and over to the right there, you got under, did you use that under number to make your proposal? Understand what I'm saying?
If they're under the minimum,
Okay, let me show you.
Yeah.
Okay. See what, okay. Did you take this number and add it to this to come up with your proposal?
we had the proposed grade, and then after we do the grades, then we see how it would affect each employee and what the cost would be, in the recommendation.
Okay, so in other words,
So we take the employee's current salary, and then we add that amount to it to get the minimum.
okay.
The minimum.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so basically, we're not really recommending, the traditional pay increase that you would think of. We're actually recommending adjustments for actual employees to be brought up to at least the minimum of the recommended salary scale.
Excuse me, Paul, if I may, for instance, when you add all those up on this column,
Right.
it's $43,000 to
Yeah.
the total salary
Yeah.
budget for the city.
Yeah. All the employees raised up. In other words, if this goes through, then all the employees, then it would take $43,000 to bring all the employees up to at least the minimum.
Okay.
Now, with the one that's over, I guess that the one employee's been over for a while, And I guess that you just make an exception in that case. You know, professionally, what happens then is you would quote redline, and the employee would not get an increase in pay until the system caught him in this case. But this employee's been over for a long time, so I guess previous councils have made exceptions and continued that any increase that the population, that all employees would get, that he would get those increases right there. He would still get that.
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't know who the employee is, but would that employee by law still get the cost of living increase?
The council has, the past councils have done that, and I would hope that would, I would hope that it still would. What happened, if I can just take, and I really try not to take a lot of your time, but what happened in this case is that you have a plant operator where you have a plant operator trainee 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, you're expected with time to go from the 1 to get the license for the 2, you get an advancement, 3, get an advancement, 4, get an advancement. This is a long-term employee who is still plant operator 1. And so the range for the 1, when you go to the 2, the range gets higher, the 3 gets higher, and the 4 gets higher. See what I mean? So with time, this employee has basically gotten the increases, and he's over the maximum, just like the race. And I would hope I would hope that exception again would be made, that he would not be treated negatively, because somebody somewhere along the line didn't encourage him to get the licenses as he went along. We built that into the system now. We're saying that you need to get the license at the next level within 18 months after meeting the experience requirements.
That's in the new job description.
That's in the new job description, yes.
What happens if they don't?
Well, it tells the supervisors they need to start encouraging them early on. And if they don't, then basically they don't do that job anymore.
So that's the thing that we got into a major discussion about it. If you have one employee that sits here and rides the system but doesn't want to contribute to the max that he can, then it throws it back on all the other employees to do his job and theirs too. So, but if this one employee goes to school and does all of his training as a wastewater treatment person does, if he goes through and does all that training along with everybody else who needs that class, then he's cross-trained to do every other jobs than just one job. So you're kind of limiting with that one person doing that one job, instead of like what we're doing now in City Hall, is everybody's being cross-trained. And I think when you do that, it's what I call it dead weight.
But I think a couple of things need to happen. Number one, for a class 4 plant, somebody has to be a responsible charge, and you have to be at least a 3 to be a responsible charge. So if you've got a 1 or a 2, they cannot be responsible for the plant. So they're not as beneficial to you as someone who has a class 3 or 4 license. And I think we're not looking to eliminate anyone from employment. We're looking at supervisors to encourage them to get their license.
All right, so going back to the same person too, I don't know how long they've been and all that, but would they be grandfathered in?
They will be here just like they are right now. I don't think you can take their salary away from
No, I
them.
wasn't referring to that, but you were talking about the 18-month requirement to advance, they would be grandfathered in.
Any employee right now, I would hope to be grandfathered in.
Right, okay.
And that person's retiring.
Yeah.
So it's kind of treated like a new policy. The business of having to move up or out is for new hires.
Yeah.
But we have to formalize that, Roland, by adopting the new job descriptions.
That is correct.
We have to do that, so.
And that's what we've been working on since January 1, since I come to the office, since we're doing that.
I guess it's a good segue for what I want to bring up next, is that what you have with the list of positions with the salary scale. Now, in the last few years, that basically has been defined by many organizations throughout the state to meet the state requirement of a pay classification plan. In other words, to have that one, the first thing that I gave you, list of positions to grade and the salary scale. That's the pay classification plan. Now that has to by state law, 83A, that has to be adopted by ordinance. You already adopt your policies by municipal order. I would suggest the same thing with the position descriptions, that they be either by municipal order or executive order. And that way, when you need to change a position description, and over the years, Larry's done a good job of actually keeping up with the position descriptions that you had. But every time you change one, you don't have to have two readings and publication costs.
How are they adopted now, Larry? Is it ordinance?
It's part of the ordinance.
That's what I thought.
It would still be by, if it was municipal order, it'd still be by the council. It would just be, it wouldn't be as, wouldn't have the readings and the publication cost.
Yeah. And that really would be, either executive or municipal order, but you do not, it does not have to be by ordinance. And just the timeliness of, ordinance requires two readings. This way you can at least have one reading and make the final decision.
But we have reworked these job classifications to combine with not just doing one job, but they do multiple jobs.
Yeah.
So we've kind of, a person just don't operate a machine. He can also do his job classification and actually have to do other things besides just that.
We built a lot of class series into the system. For example, I guess just take as an example, the customer service representatives. Within the finance department, there's probably a half dozen position descriptions that pigeonhole one little function for one person, another little function for one person. We combined all of those functions into a customer service representative and have customer service representative 1, 2, and 3. That way your people who are there have some opportunities for advancement without, being promoted to one of the top level positions, because they get adjustments over time. And by doing that combining, then it's going to automatically allow for a lot of cross training within those functions, because if somebody who does one job is not there, then somebody else could just slide right in and do that job. And it's also, I think, going to be much more, morale's going to be a lot better in that department by having that, instead of having all those little positions pigeonholed out.
And if you noticed, if you come to City Hall, give me an example of that is back there where the back windows are, we're still going to keep the drive-through, but the ladies that we're setting back there they're all going to be brought back into the main building on the front line, and then the extra space back there is going to be turned into IT. But everybody on the front line now is going to be able to answer phones, they're going to be able to do internet, meal counts for electric and internet and water. They're all going to be doing it instead of just a few. And that's the way, I think that's the way that it should be, is everybody should be cross-trained. It's going to be more beneficial to the citizens and to Bardstown.
Paul or Larry, when we look through this 330 pages of job descriptions, is there something that tells us which of these I understand a new position is going to have a new description, but is there the changes that were made to the existing, were there changes made to existing job description? In other words, when I review this, can I find where the changes are?
I did not do strike-throughs and underlines. I touched every single one of those, but I did not do strike-throughs and underlines. I'm so sorry if you bring that up.
And the format is a little different as well. That's the other reason, is because it's done by bullet points instead of by paragraphs in a lot of those sections, so that it would have been pretty much striking out the majority of the job description and then adding.
I don't suppose we'll do a hard copy of this.
Yeah, we certainly can.
Yeah. Okay.
It's on 2 pages. It's not that bad, really. I've got it.
What's it look like?
It just took us 2 hours to do one today.
And there's a lot of.
Here's one
Yeah.
that has everything except for the public works in it.
There's a lot of blank pages too, so.
Yeah. I think a lot of you look at it.
The one thing is,
Pass it around.
in electric cable, the only thing that is still lacking, as far as, and I want to bring this up, is that the only thing that's still lacking within the pay classification plan is an electric cable in the IT section. Jeff actually wants a supervisor over IT. I misheard him, and that is not in there right now. So in your next, when this comes to you for
Is
adoption.
it on this list?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's not in the job
It's not,
description.
it's neither. When this comes to you for adoption, that right now, as far as I know, that would be the only change. He wants to talk, he said that, we talked about it earlier and that we agreed to it and had a problem with that, but we did not have time to get that in there because we got the email late last night and Larry's computer's been down all day.
And the reason why he wants that, Jeff and I talked about it, is the IT they need to be able to make decisions quicker than, instead of those guys having to run to Jessica or Larry or someone to say, you know, get authorization and do this. They need to be, they need to have their supervisor who can make decisions.
Is that another warm body, or is that just a reclassification of an existing?
No, it's not another warm body, he's already existing there. He's been acting as a supervisor.
That's what
In fact, he gave me the list of duties, and I basically had him in a class series instead of a supervisory position, so.
The other thing that you'll see in what we sent to you on your iPads is, this is a list of everything starting with the highest grade and going down. What you have on your iPads is this separate out into department, which is a lot easier to read. So that, instead of having to find the IT specialist 1 and then a page over is the IT specialist 2 and amongst other jobs, it's by department. It'll be a lot easier to read that way. I just didn't want to print out that many copies of the same information but presented in a different way, so you can certainly look at it there. And also in the job descriptions, you know, they've been to the department heads, I think twice now, and they went back to them yesterday, and I've already heard back from somebody about a change, so there will probably be a few more changes in the job descriptions, and we can tell you what those are and before we ask you to adopt it.
So as far as I know, all of the people have seen it, the department have seen it. But yes, there's some things that you all have gotten today that we just got today or yesterday. And the department heads need to do a final edit along with your final edit to be sure that they're right and that the employee is accurate. And most of those are kind of, the latest ones have been up near the upper end. But basically, it's just restyling. And I just think one other comment, I don't know what Paul said, but in terms of his work, he doesn't know the individuals. And so when he did a comparison that would say bring this classification up or this person up in classification, it was without knowing personality. It was comparing with other comparable cities as best he can determine. And I would say that there aren't many cities just exactly like Bardstown, but more or less he did the work and his expertise comes there. And that's why the benefit we have is it's not my opinion or maybe Larry's or Mike's or Jessica's alone. I mean, it's his study, and that's why we wanted to go outside to get a fair look at it.
Just as a sidebar, you know, it might be nice for our information if we had some examples. I know you go through these, to rate these, whatever the level or the grade is, you ask these questions: how much mental capacity does it take? How much money do you handle? How many people do you supervise? And you assign points to that, Paul.
Yeah.
It'd just be nice. So you know, these numbers, these grades weren't just your opinion or just something you just, you know, that there's a methodology to it.
Sure.
And
I would like to offer that I would do, and Larry Green certainly could do, ask any of y'all's individual questions along the lines you said.
you know, Well, just so the rest of the council, I mean, some of us know, maybe some of us don't know so much, that there's an algorithm to go through.
We could give you that document, right, the point factor analysis.
Sure.
And then you can see how many points you get for the weather conditions, how many points you get for all the different factors. And then it'll make a lot more sense, you're right. We'll
Just
just,
for information.
yeah.
Question. Regarding advancements that are not tied into passing some type of test or whatever, how are these individuals going to be evaluated? Because all of the steps aren't tied into passing a test, so they are.
You're right,
You're
they are
correct.
not.
Okay, so then my question is, how is that individual going to be evaluated, and will they understand the process? Am I making sense of my question? Sure.
Well, Coach, it's like if somebody has a CDL license, they got a Class A and a Class B.
But they pass the test for that, though.
Right, but, yeah, but there's some people that don't want to take that CDL because of the responsibility, and I understand that. But that's one of the things that, yes, they'll have to pass a test. Just like your wastewater or your water treatment plant, there are sections down there, I think, that you have to take a test to pass, correct? To advance. So I don't,
No, but even with the scale, I think the question would be, is how is it that you would deal with evaluation? And that is by the supervisor evaluating and making any other suggestions for changes that are unique. Meaning, even within, there's a big grade, there's 50% difference in the grade. Within any one grade, there's 50% from minimum to maximum. And so, if you're saying it could have, and I'll speak outside of my department, it could a policeman that's a sergeant get a raise based on something without jumping grade, and perhaps he could, if the mayor saw fit and it was in the budget, and it came as a recommendation through a department head, then I suppose that could happen if it's budgeted.
Okay, but it goes to my question again, how is that person evaluated?
Well, I would say that the supervisors have their own form. Each of the supervisors have, we're supposed to do annual evaluations, and we do that near raise time or near budget time. And each of them will have a little different way because they will have different levels of staffs. So most of the ones, as you said, that are grade oriented, there's no argument, it's like across the board. Say the water treatment or the ones I'm involved with, if you get 2%, they're all going to get about 2%. There are exceptions to that, and I try to address that part, but that would be based on a specific evaluation, or that would be different than what you all give. Let's say if you give 2%, it'll be applied 2%, assuming that the study is correct, that everybody's, let's assume that Paul's study is just perfect. Then they'll have to get what you all say in budget, without question, without any differentiation.
Well, I'm not trying to micromanage, I'm trying to,
I guess is your question that is there ability for managers to periodically throughout the year, maybe even annually, evaluate their employees and make recommendations for raises outside of just a standard step?
about merit raises? No, I'm not talking about merit raises, I'm talking about what I think Tracy might be.
Well, like my department, we got customer service 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
So around when it gets close to probably March, when we're gonna be coming up on raises, I would look at my employees, the new hire, say she was hired last year, if she could do all of those jobs in that CSR 1 to what I think she should be doing, she would move up to CSR 2 and then get the increase that way. If she's not, then I need to let her know, or he know, that they need to work a little bit harder, because in 6 months, I'm gonna look back at them, and if they're still haven't improved, then that's what I say, well, you may have to be let go.
Well, I realize I come from a different environment, and so we have teachers that get evaluated so many times a year. That's a written process. The person that's evaluated signs off on it, they have a copy. And then the person that did the evaluation obviously has a copy. And so, based on the evaluation, when it's time to make these kind of recommendations, if you have it in writing, it's more easily understood, if that makes sense.
would you be evaluating other than making sure
I
they're just
don't know.
maintaining their job duties if you're not doing any kind of merit?
Well, I'm just saying, but that's where your expertise comes in at, because you know that they're actually doing what they should be doing.
Right.
And you document it.
And generally, if they're not, we've been documenting that across the board as well. If there's an issue with, you know, like any other supervisor or manager, you're documenting whether they're having, if there's been complaints made on the employee, you're documenting whether there's been tardiness issues or something like that. But you've also generally are knowing if there's been over and above kind of things that they've done, or if they've taken on additional responsibility that may, you know, that you maybe need to recognize. So I guess, where does that build into the process? You know, as long as it's within the compensation plan, you know, within the grades, within the rankings that somebody's taking on. Now, obviously, there's promotions, and when it's into a supervisory role or changes jobs, you know, classification, that would be something that they would move forward with a recommendation from supervisor to the mayor to approve and move forward with. And maybe not necessarily wait until a certain time of year, you know, but whenever they take on those additional responsibilities. But
We're not as strict as the teachers, which I've had that same thing. Paul's system that started in the 90s, early 90s maybe, was it? It's very close to the state employee system, and I worked there too. And you have trimesters, you did evaluations 3 times a year and all that business. But it's hard, you sit down and evaluate a garbage pickup versus a teacher, it isn't really quite the same. And you do the checklist, it might say, you know, are the appearance good and so on, we provide you, or some of the questions on a standard form that you give a supervisor don't apply here. And so we're so diverse that it really isn't appropriate to have the standard, what the state makes everybody do here wouldn't work. And Larry has worked with it for 25 years or more. And it just, so it developed into its own. The chief of police, and all the different department heads have got their system that they think is fair. And we're supposed to document and evaluate and meet with their employees, et cetera, as necessary. And it's important to do, in my opinion, to let the employee know how they're doing, and it's something we encourage down. But as long as the mayor is the final decision maker of the executive action, then obviously we're limited in what we can say until we get through. If Jessica has an employee she wants to move up, or Tracy, then obviously we're limited in what we can say, because you all have has a budgetary impact, or it may be a position, and we're limited in what we can do. So we're limited in what we can say.
Well, and I think it would be safe to say, it was used the CSRs, Councilman Williams, is we now have the CSR 1, 2, and 3, but those, they have more than just one job now. Some just had one job. Now they have a list of jobs that I had said, and that gives those people a chance to, you work the same steady pace, or you climb the ladder and you progress in the CSR 1, 2, and 3. And I think if you learn quick and you do as Tracy and we have all kind of discussed, that gives that advancement and that person the ability to earn more money, because they are willing to work and produce.
Let me ask you a question there. You indicated,
Councilman Buckman had it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Does all the classifications, and I'll go back to what I'm familiar with, the police officer, is there tiers of progression in the police officer and the patrolman section? Such as, that was one of the issues when I was patrolman, that, you know, you have an officer on days, there's no room for progression, you can't move to sergeant because you already got a sergeant, or you got only so many supervisor slots and they are filled forever, okay? But you got patrolman that starts out at the bottom, and you make 2% increments over 20 years. I did 20 years, I went to supervisor and then went back for unknown reason, and I still never did max out in that pay grade. I was still below, you can't max out in that pay grade or progress at a 2% interest, or 2% increment. So there needs to be tiers in that classification.
Did you resolve that issue, kind of?
No.
Well, no, not really. I brought, maybe 3 years ago, a step type pay scale to be considered. So they would do that, you start off with the pay grade at the minimum, and by you had your 20 or 25 years, you were at the maximum of what it currently said. Because there's really no way, like Councilman Buckman said, to move up, and I'm really not a big fan of merit raises for police. I think I've said that very openly because I think that creates a quota system.
Yes.
So I think for police, it should be based on the years of service, not what we do, because then.
We pay our officers well.
I'll be honest with you.
Right there in Secret. If an officer, young officer starting out, or a firefighter, knew at the 1 year mark, he's gonna make this. At the 3 year mark, he's gonna make this. At the 5 year mark, I'm just an example. Then he can plan his life and say, well, I'm gonna stay with Bardstown, and I can afford to buy a house at my 3 year mark, or I may not be able to recruit. So I'm gonna stay with this company, and I'll be making this, and I'll be making this, if I progress, you know. And he may want to stay on third shift, he may not be never be a third shift supervisor. But he's a valuable asset to the city because he has knowledge, more knowledge and training as he goes along. And he may be a fire instructor, he may be the, you know, we got EMTs on there, there's a lot of different things you can do, but never be a supervisor. That needs to be merited. And that's where we need tiers in the basic, for these guys that are out there doing whatever, but they're still learning and becoming a more asset to the city. And if they know where they're going to be at in years to come, then they can plan their life accordingly and they'll stay with us.
Mr. Thomas, do you have an answer for that?
I do. That is not built into these recommendations. That's what I thought. It is not.
Well, and
Is that one that should be?
It would be totally outside what I have presented to you here. If you do that, it would be totally outside that. But basically, I've seen that in a number of places, and seen a number of places where basically it has been withdrawn. Because when you're saying to an officer, what you're saying to each employee is that when you go through the next year, you're going to get an X percentage increase in pay. You don't know what the economy is going to be during that time. You know, you may be in a reduced economy like we were 5 or 6 years ago, and you've got 1 or 2 sectors of employees that get huge increases in pay. The other employees are getting much less than that, and it winds up causing conflict for everybody. So if you want to have that kind of system, I'm certainly, it's your system, but I would not recommend having that system.
I think also that Chief, you'd given the mayor a couple of years ago that step increase, and even though it wasn't built into the pay and classification plan, it was something that you were following, and you made recommendations just last fall that were in line with those steps which the mayor adopted. So it doesn't keep the mayor from saying, well, I'm going to get, the mayor can, he signs those personnel action requests. He could, in 2 years, he could say, well, he could take out his cheat sheet that the chief has given him and say, I'm going to give this person a raise and this person a raise. But it's not formalized into our process.
But it's within that pay.
And
it's within that pay.
But
class.
as long as it stays in that pay and classification system, and as long as there's a budget for it, then you can do it.
Yeah.
And that's so it can be done informally as well. And that's, I think, and I think that's what Paul's saying, is that there are cities that have adopted it and say this is what you are going to get, and then the economy changes, and they say, you know, we've got an extra $50,000 we have to pay out in this department. They say we can't afford it, and they say, well, we promised it. So anyway, it can be done informally as well, and as long as you know, it might be a hybrid system compared to one where you have those steps, and it really is like almost a philosophical approach, and also one of how much money you think you're going to have as a council to spend. If you know you're going to have it, it might be easier to promise it than if you're not sure about what the economy is going to do.
There's not a lot of compensation plans today that actually have steps. You know, in other words, 1 year and then after 3 years or 5 years or whatever. There's not a lot of those out there just for that reason. early on, there's a ton of those out there. But basically where you have the range divided up into steps. And that's almost been discontinued because in the past few years, what we had for changes in cost of living, it's been very little. Many years we've had, less than 2%. And if you've got the steps built in of 5%, whatever the state government had 5% per year. When I first started working in this business, they haven't followed that for years and years and years. 5% per year would be a lot when you have 2% or 1%. That's not change the cost of living. So you'd be better off doing it informally than actually adopting a formal system to have that. I'm not saying it can't work, but I'm saying you just don't. I don't think you can draw a picture and promise anybody what their pay will be 10 years from now, or 15 years from now, or 20 years from now. When you put that on paper, that's what you're doing. In other words, if you plan the life of the career of a 20-year employee, you're saving that. They may make decisions, and then as an employer, you have to change it. And I think you're better off taking it incrementally a year at a time and do the best you can anyhow with the employees.
The other thing is you also would be promising for future city councils as to what they're predicting or committing to what their budget would have to be.
I have a quick question for Larry Hampton. Larry, you indicated that the department has their own system. Is it a written system guideline to follow? It's just common sense? You understand what I said?
I could show you an evaluation form that the city's used in past times.
Right.
It might apply to some people, but most it wouldn't. So if you take public works, it's going to be different than evaluation in water, et cetera, et cetera. But basically, gosh, the operators all work together every day, and it's sort of like they're part of a team, and I'm not sure that you would need so much evaluation just to get the job done. But even though I do think the formalization or conversation once a year by a supervisor is advised, it's in the policies that's in that ordinance. I believe it's in your ordinance as it stands.
I want to get back to your question, if I
Yes,
can. And I'm just going to use the CSR as an example in answering your question, how you get from the 1 to the 2 to the 3, okay? And this is in the job description. Employees in the class series generally enter the class of CSR 1 and progress to CSR 2 and 3 after meeting predetermined criteria, including 1, experience requirements, demonstrating ability to perform essential functions at each level, and the recommendation of the supervisor and chief financial officer and approval of the mayor. Okay, you have to have 2 years of experience at the 1 to get to the 2, and 5 years of experience total to get to the 3. During that time, Larry and Tracy actually color-coded. They listed the duties of the CSR would do, color-coded. Here's what we expect the CSR 1 to know. Here's what we expect the CSR 2 to know, and the 3. So to get from the 1 to the 2, you have to meet all the criteria that they've outlined in that a 1 should know in order to get to the 2. So basically, you've got 2 years to meet that criteria. And then it's up to the employee to know that, and it's up to the supervisor to give that employee the opportunity to get to know that. And then to get from the 2 to the 3, 5 years of experience. So you're there for 5 years. Then after 5 years, you're really expected to know all the functions of the job.
I have a question.
Yes.
What if you had an employee that was fast track that superseded everything that was given to them, A+ employee? With that criteria, then you would kind of be at a standstill because you wouldn't be able to get that raise that you deserve. Is it, am I?
Yeah, it could be.
I mean, just knowing customer service, you get someone in who is just awesome and wants to learn more, and then you have stipulations like that. I love this plan. I like this. I like this. But I'm just saying that there should be something built in where if you do have that employee that's a go-getter, they shouldn't be penalized to get to the next level because they have to wait so many years.
Keisha, I think I can answer that, and that is that by having class series, you provide more opportunities, but then you also, there are time limits because otherwise you might have everyone progressing too fast, and then that throws your budget off. In the absence of that class series, you only have the CSR, for instance, in that. The same thing would hold true for others. You only have the CSR, and they have to stay there until there's an opening and higher up, and that might be another 10 years. It might be a long time before that. And so what we're doing is we're providing more opportunities for growth, but it's still not ideal in that you're never going to have a situation where someone can be used to their ultimate benefit to the city and recognized financially as soon as that happens. There's always going to be a lag time.
Well, I understand
There's
that.
always going to be a certain number of jobs that we have, and there are some jobs that you have where there's less advancement. If you come into the city and as a garbage tipper, which is the hardest job we have in the city, I think, your chance for advancement is to a driver. And then beyond that, in that department, there's nothing else.
Okay, let's go to the garbage, the tippers, what have you.
Right.
So right now, I guess there was no change for them, but how do they,
Right.
I know, go
How do they
to
progress?
sanitation, what, 2, is it?
The only thing they can do is go to a driver. Okay, well, then we have that's very good. But as far as their skill level, I don't know what skill level you can advance to. There's not a whole lot. The attributes of
Hold on, let me
a
ask this then, maybe I didn't. So 2% a year, right? Is that what the increase would be?
The pay increase.
The pay
From
increase?
year to year.
Okay, so if a garbage worker is making $23,000, how would they ever get up to where they need to be? I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, that's the hardest job out there almost, except for the police officers and firefighters. They're the front line of our community, and CSRs, and I mean, they get paid
So
less
I
than.
think I can answer that, and that is that there is more than one way that typical question
I just
people
see
ask
the
is,
same numbers listed. I mean, how is that they make the?
the way that they usually get a raise is because if a person comes in as either a maintenance worker 1 in public works or as a garbage tipper, what we're looking for is somebody that can do the job without getting hurt. So you have to be strong and you have to be fit, and somebody that will show up every day because the garbage doesn't wait. You can't take a day off. Somebody's got to go in.
That garbage.
And so what happens is, in addition to the cost of living increases, in addition to steps that we have in some jobs, not all jobs, and in addition to the room for advancement that there are in some departments that there aren't in others, the way that people get raises is that department head, about this time in June, will go to the mayor and say, listen, I've got 3 outstanding employees and I want to keep them, and I'm going to suggest that you give these people a raise. And that happens. And so that's why when it comes time for the council to vote on a percentage for salary increases, I always hope that they will say, we're gonna have like 2% for cost of living and 1% for merit. Because there are employees that don't fall into this plan is only on paper, and it's as good as we can make it, but there are times when an employee just needs to have a raise. And if we're gonna keep good employees, and that's where that's where you hope you have good department heads that will go to bat for their good employees, which we do in Public Works.
Well, I know-
And
I
then we
know
have a
they
mayor
do.
who has an open ear to saying, well, they may not fit into any of these categories, or they may not have an evaluation, but if you're telling me that this is an outstanding employee and needs a raise, I'll give it to him. And the mayor has that discretion within the budget.
Question. I see what she's saying, and I'm kicking my dead horse here. Every department has a progression. Section 1, Section 2, I've marked every department, from garbage tipper all the way up, except for police and fire, has a progression in it. Has a maintenance 1 to maintenance 2 to service rep 1, 2, 3. You got, let's see, maintenance operator 1, operator 2, operator 3. Everybody's got progression except for police and fire. And I understand what you're saying, that there's a sidebar here that the chief goes to, but the problem in the background, if you got a chief that is not as good a chief as ours, or was, or has, and he don't like you, or he don't want to step up and ask the mayor, then that department gets left out. But I don't understand why we got progression in every one of these except for police and fire.
Chief, you want to go, what happened when your employees got increases, what, a couple of years ago or last year? Can you address that?
The original step plan that I submitted to then Mayor Shekels, we took what I proposed, and Mayor Shekels did actually pretty much at the time meet those categories. I think you recall.
Yeah, I got a $2 something raise. I was down,
He was
still in patrolman. I was 18-year patrolman, making the same as a 10-year patrolman. And you had patrolmen that had been there for 3 years, making the same as people were there 5 and 6 years as patrolmen.
quite honestly.
You take a 6-year patrolman, it's a whole lot different than a 3-year patrolman. Because they're more knowledgeable, they know what not to get hurt, how not to get hurt, not situations you need to. That's what you pay people for, is knowledge, and expertise, you know, and it's time oriented.
And I think what I was gonna say is too, there's been too much good old boy system, to be very frank with it over the years, and that was obvious to me as an outsider coming in. So I wanted to at least standardize it a little bit to give everybody the same fair field to play on, I guess you could say. And so that's why I broke it down in the 20 years, if you were here 20 years. And again, understanding that I was using it more for the informal base, as you and Larry both kind of mentioned, that, you know, if this is something that we can go on, we'll keep people. Obviously, our young officers are looking, they're not knocking on doors trying to leave, but they're always, you know, and he used a great example. We have an officer that moved here that hadn't bought a house, and he's trying to think of what point he is, and I think that's why I really use that example. So it's just kind of hard to know that there's really no progression. That if you come on making $30,000 a year, in 8 years you're going to be making $32,000 a year. At 50 cents an hour or 35 cents an hour is not going to keep quality people. Let's just be real. And so that's why we were trying to at least introduce something that we could informally go on, that the mayor and the council could look at each year and try to keep it within those years. Because again, I'm not a mayor. I'm sorry.
Is that still in place? Is that system still in place?
Somewhat. It altered a bit last year, and of course we're unknown right now for this upcoming, but we don't know. I don't know how
That's also not there for fire. And it's not there for fire because there's going to be major changes that in there. That's right. We're not there, not there yet. Back to your question, we're concentrating everything on the adjustments of the class series CSR. You know that we do have sanitation worker 1, sanitation worker 2. I hope that what would happen is that sanitation worker would almost be seen as an entry-level position. We've got a bunch of positions in the Public Works Department that they could be advanced to very, very easily. And I would hope that would happen. In other words, that's an entry-level position, and then after that you get in. We did the different levels in public works, because in public works, I'm talking about we have water distribution license requirements for the state. We have sewer collection license requirements for the state. That's why we have that class series there, as they get the different licenses, like the water and wastewater plants. That's why those series are there. I really hope that not just sanitation workers, but other positions where we don't have the class series, that they could come over, that they could move around within the city, and they wouldn't be stuck. They wouldn't be stuck in that one position. But they're there, and we paid a lot of attention really in the class series to pretty much the entry level of the lower paying positions. But there's a bunch of entry level, there's a bunch of class series there now that were not there before.
I don't think we've always had a sanitation level two.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been much,
Yeah.
once you're there, you kind of, most often, what would happen if someone proves to be an exceptional employee, what we typically like to do as a city is, if there is a job opening within any department, we generally advertise first within other employees. So if there's another employee in another department that is interested in moving up or changing departments in order to find advancement, we generally try to look at those folks first before we ever advertise to the public, especially for a maintenance or entry-level plant operator or something like that. And we've had a lot of positions where people have transferred. Maybe a lot of people have started out as a meter reader and moved over in lots of different departments. So that's one way that you can, just because you get hired in one role at an entry-level job doesn't necessarily mean you're going to stay there if you're a hard worker. And now, but you're right, there are certain departments that there's just not a lot of more complications or more responsibility you can take on within that role. So there's very few, like you say, ways to advance. And there's some other, job roles that once you, for instance, in maintenance personnel, like for the lift stations, they get hired in and that oftentimes they come from another role, but once they're there, there's no really other jump. Once you obtain the class 3 operator, maybe you do that in 5 years, that's kind of where you are. There's not a whole, once you get there, there's not really a lot of other room to grow. And that's why it is important that this city takes opportunities. If there's not automatic raises or merit given in budgets, that you at least take the opportunity every so often to make sure nobody's gotten left out of the range.
And Jessica, thank you.
Yeah.
I understand that point. Working at corporate offices, that's important that you hire in-house because you want to be dedicated to the people that work for you. What I'm saying is that looking at the numbers here, customer service representatives, sanitation workers, they're kind of at the bottom of the scale. And how do they move up a couple of $1,000s, because they're your front line. It's like the military. You have your generals, your captains, but then you have your front line, and they're the ones on the battleground. So when I look at my customer service representatives who are screamed and cussed at and hollered at, taking hundreds of calls a day, or I look at the garbage men who are out there picking up garbage that sometimes they shouldn't pick up, cans that are too heavy, doing their job, rain, sleet, snow, sun. And they're at the bottom of the list. And being in that field before, I know that they make more than what they're making now. I'm just wondering, how will we ever catch up? How will we pay them what they deserve? I'm not saying max them out, but bring them up a little bit, show them that, we want them here. I mean, I know that you want them here, but it's just, they're at the bottom and they do such hard work. I know that you did these numbers and this is the state numbers. What about comparison with maybe other waste management or customer service entities? It's mind-boggling that they're at the bottom. I'm not downing anyone about not giving raises or anything. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that how will they ever make 25 or 26,000 if we continue to do the same thing that's been done in the past?
I'd try to answer that. I believe if you checked our wages for sanitation workers versus the private industry, you'd find that our benefits are quite superior, that our turnover is less for a reason. We pay a pretty good healthcare package. There's other retirement package that I doubt that there's been, we've had a few people, I can name you several names of people I went all my career with that picked up waged all their career and retired with a pretty good pension. And I can almost guarantee you, if they worked for a private industry, they wouldn't have made a career there. There wouldn't be a retirement program. They would go on and keep the wage down and get an entry level over and over and over again.
And I understand what you're saying, Larry. I do understand that. But everyone at the city has that chance to have that same retirement and things of that nature. But I'm just saying, shouldn't the ones at the bottom, how will they ever move up just a little bit? Because
I'll offer one more comment.
Okay.
On occasion, the cities decide to give a raise. We've done two different ways. You give a block raise of so many cents per hour across the board, which would give the lower people a catch-up provision. And within the 2% or within the 5%, it was easier when it was 5%. But when it gets down to nothing, it's hard not to give everybody a 1 or 2% if the cost of living is that. But that aside, I mean, it's a long conversation, but we've done that where we've given 50 cents because it just wasn't a livable wage. And that is up to you all to determine that. So that's something we've dealt with before.
And the follow-up with that, and we have discussed that numerous of times, that a percentage raise will make that further apart all the time. The higher it gets the most, the lower it gets the less. I'm a big believer of if we got 50 cents to give everybody 50 cents. And that way, they do come up. But at the same time, and I've heard here many a time, that you might lose some of your top people by doing it that way. But we have tried that.
We do both ways.
Yeah, we've done
We
both.
do both ways.
Yeah.
What about a possible years of service raise? That way it don't impact the city all at once. It only impacts you every 5 years. An employee at his 5-year anniversary, he gets a bonus percentage. At 10 years, he gets a bonus percentage. That, I think that's what Councilman Copeland talked about, that we need to bring these on people up a little bit more. Because a garbage tipper may be a 20, and they were good. I know he talked about 20 years of garbage tipper, and they were great employees, and they retired and are happy as can be. But yes, and at that 2% induction, they'll never get very much higher. So maybe a 5-year increment, or a 5-year bonus for staying on with the city. That would be an option, and it wouldn't impact the city all at once.
There's a lot of longevity. There's not a lot, there's several longevity plans out there. Basically, that would be outside what we're doing here. In
Right,
other words,
I agree.
outside this. We're
They
saying
brought it
that,
up, so.
you know, at the end of a 5-year anniversary, you get an increase in pay, whether it be a percentage or dollar amount. That's out there.
But I think that's where the discretion of the supervisor to come to me, and of course I would come to you before I would do that, is in this pay classification, you have that range between 21 and 35,000, and that would, and if that supervisor would come to me and say, you know, I have these group of guys, you know, they're here, can you give them extra money? It's within that classification, which that is midway, but I would bring it to you all to let you know what's going on, let you basically say, yes, that's a good idea, or no.
Combs, I have a question. As we look at this compensation scale, do we have any employees that are at or below the poverty level? Because I know at one time a previous mayor commented that we actually had employees that qualified for food stamps.
When we was on the police department, Council,
No,
we had two, maybe three officers that could actually file for food stamps and welfare.
and two
Some
people
on the
get clumps
sheet,
on
too.
home because they didn't make enough money. But that was right, I'm sure.
Some on the sheet too.
And I think one of the answers to that, there's one thing we hadn't really talked about, and that is the entry level pay. We have raised, I forget, I mean, it's gone up. Right now, the minimum wage is $7.25, $7.50, $7.70, something like that. And our entry level pay has gone from, like, just in the last few years, it's gone from 10 to 10.50 to 11. And so one thing we can do is as we, say if we have a 2% cost of living increase, we can raise that entry level pay up by that 2%. Now, the grades go up by 2% as well. That's something we've always done. But we could raise the entry level. I mean, it's $11 an hour if the council wants to. We could raise it. It's all just, budget. It's all money. And it really comes down to, pardon me?
All you gotta do is remember how you're gonna fund it.
That's right. And what's fair from the community to the people that serve the community.
Let me do one more example for you if I can. With the maintenance operator in Public Works, we have maintenance operator 1, 2, 3, and 4. In order for a maintenance operator to become operator 3, they have to have either a class 3 water distribution or sewer collection license. We don't have those opportunities in sanitation
Right.
for that to happen.
And I understand that.
So that's why I hope that we could use sanitation as an entry level to get in, then move over and get to a water plant, wastewater plant.
But if those positions aren't available, then how would they?
Well, they are.
They are.
They are routinely.
They are.
We have openings routinely across the city, and we advertise that. And there are people that take advantage of it, and there are people that don't. There are people that
But what I want to say is, I understand that there may be positions out there that you can go to another department. But for someone who may be happy being a garbage tipper, and they may do their job very well, how do we get them where they need to be?
In some cases, they don't. In some cases, people say, this is what I'm happy doing, I know what it pays, and the community says, through the council, and through this system, the community says, well, this is what that job pays, I know you're happy with it, I know you don't want any more responsibility, I know
But
you
we're
don't want
saying
more."
what that job pays. I mean, I'm saying, why are they stuck at 23,000?
Because that's what the job, if you look at other communities, if you do, that's what this
Okay,
this
that's
system was
good.
for.
That's good, Larry. That's good, because, I mean, you know what?
I want to address the rest of the
No,
council.
I know, but what I'm saying is
Right.
that you're saying that the other communities, but what are they making hour?
So we start people out at entry-level positions. And these will be the lower grades in our system at $11 an hour. Health insurance for the individual employee at $104 a month. Health insurance for the whole family at $300 a month that comes out of the pay. Automatic entry into the Kentucky retirement system. If that's not fair, because fair is so subjective,
Right.
if that's not fair, then if the will of the council is that we raise that up, then we certainly can do that. But that's what the consensus of the council over the years has been, and to get us to where we are today. And if there's a consensus to change that, I'm all for it.
Okay, can I move on? It's okay. You got this, you get, you can pass those out.
Yeah.
Okay. We were asked to look at salaries for mayor and council members. And Larry contacted again, the Kentucky League of Cities. What you have in front of you, he requested information from cities' population, 8,000 to 20,000. Population, he did it by population. I looked at this, and what we really need to do is we need to look at size of the budget, not necessarily the population, because with your utilities and with your budget, I'm not sure it's representative of what's here, although I think there's some good information here. What I'm saying is I want to get back to KLC, get some information on budget sizes and the salaries of mayor and council members, then come back to you with a report. Because I really don't think this is sufficient for that. I do think there's some good information here, but I don't think it's information that, I think there's better information out there. You okay with that, Mayor? I just think we need budget. We may have to get into second-class cities to match budgets that you have, but if we do, so be it. You know, we're dealing with dollars instead of population sizes.
I think Paul gave me an example of Georgetown, which has a population, the city of Georgetown has a population of 30,000. Their budget is 30 million. We have a population of 13,000, and we have a budget of 50 million.
Because there's very few cities like us, like Bardstown, that have, you know, cable and water and sewer and electric. We're pretty fortunate that we have our own utilities. There's not that many people or small towns out there that have that. So it has to be judged and looked at a little different.
Yeah, it really does. Most cities have had separate boards for utilities since the early 1900s, because bonding companies were requiring it at that time if they went to bond, that they had to establish a separate board. And a lot of that is still out there, whereas in this city, all the utilities report to the mayor and legislative body. So once we get the other information, we'll definitely get back with you on this information. I feel like we took a lot of time, and I apologize for that.
No, as long as you're informing, we're good.
Yeah. Okay?
Councilman Copeland, what I'd like to do with you, because I know you're passionate about the sanitation, if you'd like to get together, let's look at that and make a proposal. We'll look at, see what we can do with that. I agree with you. But let me tell you the changes also that what we're doing is we have our risk manager out there. We're looking at a new garbage truck. It's going to make it a whole lot easier. And we're looking at different dumpster sites that are inadequate or unsafe or not user-friendly. We're looking at those, and those are the changes that we are going to make. It's in the public sometimes it's not going to like that, but we're going to make those changes because we have to. And but I'd like to get with you on that. I've always felt that way myself.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay, item number 2 is mayor's report of the Tourist Commission.
I think we need to talk about budget first. B.
Oh, I'm sorry, B. I didn't have my glasses. 2016 budget discussion, Tracy.
I didn't know I was gonna be on the agenda. No, it was, didn't know I was up for discussion. No, I'm just kidding. Councilman Copeland had wanted to know what it would look like if we took out the revenue stream of the occupational tax. So I sent out that budget summary to her, and then I CC'd the rest of the council and the mayor on that email.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do I have any questions of Tracy?
Over the budget? Yes.
Yes.
Let me see if I can find it. There's a page on there where it says, BIDC and CETA. Okay. It looks like they were slashed $20,000, is that correct?
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that, please?
I'm only going by what I was told from my predecessor, that with the sale of the land that they received in the fall, was it October? That because they received all those monies, this year we wouldn't fund as much as we had the last 2 years, because prior to the last 2 years, we were only giving them $6,300. So we went back to $6,300.
So the money that they received from the agreement that they had with the city, that goes into reserve to use for other projects, right?
So 347 for the land,
Right.
that all went to BIDC.
Right, and it's gonna be on reserve to use for future projects, is that correct?
That's.
I mean, why would that-
BIDC, about that.
That's, that money went to them.
It did go to them, but it's for future projects, correct, or no? Are you saying they're
Their
gonna,
money, well, I understood.
What I understand is it's in restricted funds.
yes, restricted
What it
funds.
is. That money is. and they
So why
couldn't use
would,
it
I mean,
for-
the mayor, excuse me, the governor just came and gave all kind of accolades and how great of a job that the city is doing and Kim, and how could we not fund that correctly? I'm just, I mean, is there any way that Kim could come and, or a representative come and explain that, or?
Try to answer.
Okay.
The mayor said the budget is where it is today, and Tracy is supposed to follow up with some questions to see what they're using that money for, so that we can answer the questions.
Okay,
It isn't over yet.
okay.
So that is a draft, and it's not the final, and sometimes councilmen have opinions that we want to hear. And so we're in the last month, we're in the budget process, and we're going to be asking questions about, to answer, literally answer, when you say restricted, that money that we gave, that came from the city, are we getting our fair share? Is the county paying the equal figure? And if not, what are the figures? And so there are questions that needs answering. And
I think too that the amount, there's a contract, I mean, that's an interlocal agreement that formed BIDC. So there's a contract that stipulates how much we put in. I imagine the amounts are dictated by that contract. I'm imagining. It's not something we don't just make it up.
Like, I
So-
talked to Kim this morning, and just to get a little bit of background, and then I emailed her a couple questions later on. And once she answers those, then I'm gonna pass them along to the mayor, and then if there's any other questions he has of BIDC.
I would hope that it's based on some contract. It's not just, we didn't just make up.
Well, I just don't want to assume anything. I would love to hear what Kim has to say in regards to that type of
And they are
money.
doing a presentation in July. I think they were supposed to do that tonight, but they got postponed until July.
What have we been giving them?
The last 2 years, well, last year we gave them a little over 27,000. The year before that, it was 26. It's on the sheet, the detail sheet in admin.
But if you look at the thing fairly carefully, you'll see it's not just the BIDC, it's in CETA, it's downtown or at Main Street,
Yes.
and there's a half a dozen different items that get split out. You gotta add them all up. And then you need to check to see whether it's fair. In other words, if it's according to the agreement, or is it 50/50? And so there's just some questions that staff has to do to catch up, and then any questions y'all have of them, would be, could be passed on to Tracy, and we'll try to get answers.
Now, Kim did tell me that BIDC and Nacapa and there's, I think, Main Street or the CETA is the umbrella over the rest of those. So they're all together entwined. But I told her I'd like to meet with her to learn more about how they work together.
And what I'm trying to do is to make sure that everything that we're doing now is what is fair to the taxpayers and the citizens of Bardstown. And are we paying more than we should, than our fair share, or are we paying the equal amount? And that's what we're looking at, or that's what I'm looking at right now, having my department heads and just to look at this. Are we paying the equal share, or are we paying more? We have to be fair to the citizens of Bardstown. That's who elected us. And that's who we have to serve, and that's who we have to answer to. So, and that's what I'm doing, is make sure that it is fair and equal, and that we're not supporting no one that we don't have to.
Well, I understand. I just want to make sure that if there is money that was there and is not there now, why did we make the change? That's what I'm asking. As far as BIDC and CETA, clearly the community, city and county, it's an advantage for us to have them because we continuously have new business come here. Not only do we have new business come here, but they're always shopping for Bardstown. We tend to be the best, so why not come to the best? So, you know, in retrospect, I want us to be fair to that entity.
Okay. I'd still like to see the extra $100,000 in for the extra street. We've talked about that several times. The budget
We're
still
gonna put
is.
that in there.
Okay.
It's been added. I just haven't given an updated budget. I was waiting for all the changes.
And does this budget include the additional $43,000 that Paul Combs spoke of?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it doesn't.
There's a finance committee meeting Thursday that's gonna address it and then bring it to the council.
So if we adopt that, that would bump this up $43,000.
Correct.
Well, actually more than that, wouldn't it? Don't you have to figure the 2% on that, or no?
2%'s already in.
2%'s already in it. It depends on who does the council tell the mayor you'd like to see it in there. Do you want it in there prior to the 2%, or do you want it the 2% and then add that as an additional?
Well, that's $800.
I'm just saying.
That $800 is pretty important to those people that are.
It's a $49
Boy, I'd like to see you
million
rail on
budget.
that. Rather try to explain why we cut them a piece of 1%, you know.
Well, I will say this, that the Paul Combs study is a 2014, 2015 project with the intention that it would have been done before now. And it just so happened that it's right. But
And you really have to understand that before the study was done, there was a lot of raises given beforehand. And you're gonna have to make things right to the others, other employees. And I don't, we didn't have a say in it, but that's what we had to do. But on that, I think there were some cuts that I was talking to Tracy about today. Would you wanna go over those?
There is a 45-50 for the street pavement to the sewer plant.
I went out and looked at that, and I think we can get by on it. Don't hurt me.
I'm not, what I was gonna interject in this is that I didn't really care truly whether the whole thing got paid, but that improvements to the road are needed. So whether that be going toward the ditching, the sections that continue to wash out with chips, there were constant gravel that has to be put in there because there's probably some culverts that need to be added. Putting money towards getting that road, because it is a mile long, and my main goal is, again, not to have gold plate and make everything super nice, but to make it safe when we've had 2 winters back to back and we've had inclement weather, Public Works is incredibly busy getting the public streets cleared off and make sure the water plant's clear. But that's one of those areas that gets put to the back burner, and I'll make sure our employees can get back there safely, and then our chemical deliveries can get back there safely. That $45,000 is, again, does not have to mean, it probably couldn't surface the whole thing anyways, but to put towards making improvements to that drive. And if we need to hold off and only put, 5 to 10,000 towards that, we can do that. That's an area that we can do. That's just something they've asked for probably every year since I've been here, and we've always taken it out. So I was trying to make an effort to make some improvements to the road. Since the chip seal made it better, but again, there are still sections because there's additional work like ditching and things that need to be done that even allow that not to hold up well. So I would agree with you. The whole thing is probably not even there yet, but I would like to make some improvements to the road.
After riding back through the road does need improvements. There are certain places where culverts have to be put in because of washouts, and it's just a must. But I'd much rather have that graded and rocked and some chip seal put down, and there's some minor improvements. But using the whole 45,000 back there, I would like to see that taken out and just some repair done to it.
So would we leave any money in there to do any repairs, or do
Yes,
they need to hold off?
I think you need to leave some money in there to make repairs. There are repairs that's got to be done. There's grading and there's some, like I said, culvert repair that has to be done. Now, I'd like to see that done and then chip sealed and rocked. So what kind of money are you looking at leaving that in there?
I'm sitting here trying to debate how much I can do with that. Maybe 5 to 10. We've already spent
10,000?
quite a bit on gravel each year.
10,000
I think
good?
10 would help, yeah. And that would continue towards the gravel area and then get some ditch work done and some culverts put in easily. And keep in mind, that's always an area that I hold off at the end of the year. That if I'm running tight or overrunning, I just don't do, those kinds of things. Yeah.
Could I ask a question? In regard to the Finance Committee meeting that's on Thursday, will the council be ready for a first read of the budget on Tuesday? I need to know.
I
don't know. I need to have a finance committee meeting for the discussion that we discussed.
Well, the finance committee meeting, we're going to talk about the methods we can increase our revenue. We're going to understand all of that. But as I said earlier, the budget as it's written, it shows an occupational tax increase, but we can make that when we pass the budget with an occupational tax increase, that doesn't mean we're improving an occupational tax. We can make it anything else that we wish. Or we could take it out if we wanted. We couldn't even have any increase and just keep eating our seed corn. But the finance committee discussion is going to be about how we fund it, not about how much we're going to spend. I guess is what I'm saying. That's my thoughts.
Well,
the budget
I'll rest on that.
How much we're going to spend and what we're going to spend it on is a discussion we're having right now.
Yeah. If you voted on as is and you didn't somehow or another come up with
Right.
the financing, then where are you at?
We could amend the budget. We could amend the budget. Or we could not have the occupational tax increase and take more out of our unrestricted reserves, which I don't like to do, but we.
And I think that's dangerous.
Well, and also to.
Or excuse me, are we going to amend the budget and take out some of the spending? The budget can always be amended.
You can take back the $100,000 on streets and roads that we are behind, which I would not like to do that, but you can take out some major capital projects. Water, sewer, electric, cable, you can take out that.
So the budget that I will attach to the council packet on Friday will be the first reading budget.
Well, wait a minute.
Okay, wait a minute.
Um,
Too fast.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go
No,
ahead.
go ahead.
Anyway, you already taken out the $400,000 out of, the way you took it out of general account, so that left a deficit of $397,238, a deficit.
Right.
If you rob Peter Paul, go down to combined utility, you can take at 250, well, you got 653, 360 in it. So if you rob Peter Paul, so you have a balance of 256,122 surplus, right?
Well, you can look at it as a surplus or a margin of error.
I'm going down utility ending balance, and because you got a deficit in general fund of $397,238. That's taking out the $400,000. I think you should take it out because it's misleading if you leave it in there and you're going to be voting on something assuming that you're going to have the revenue and it has not been approved. So I'd rather leave it as it is, what you have here. You got it taken out. You got a debt of $397,238. Okay, you go down to combined utilities. If you take 200, you have an ending balance of $653,360 and ending balance in combined utility. So you could put some of that funds up there of Rob Peter Paul, and you still have a balance of $256,122,000 in surplus. You read me?
I do.
Okay.
But what you want to do is you want to, when you go to pass this budget, you're going to want to balance your general fund. So what we would have to do is dip into our savings or our unrestricted funds to take care of that deficit in order to show that when, at the end of the fiscal year, we can put money back into our savings.
But let me make another comment. When we first reviewed this budget at a work session, you did not show a deficit.
No.
Right. If we had matter of fact, we haven't even reviewed, we stopped at one point in the budget. I think we stopped, I don't know for sure we got the water. But if I knew that we was gonna have this extraordinary expense in the fire department, when we had this first budget meeting, I'm quite sure, in my opinion, some council members, we could probably had some of the department maybe do some cuts, well, we wouldn't have this deficit. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand, and that's up to you as a council to make your actions or your words known to the mayor.
But what created that extraordinary expense in the fire department, right?
Right.
Okay. So like I said, like it's saying that we have you robbing Peter Paul and you still have 256,120. I'd rather leave it like it is, and we should vote on that. If you put the occupation tax in there, $400,000, you're voting on assuming revenue that you don't know for sure it's going to be there now.
Right, so you're gonna wanna use your savings to take up.
Well, you're going to have to.
Yeah, to take up the deficit, because you don't wanna say we're gonna have a deficit.
Because it'd be inappropriate bookkeeping to me. You put revenue in there and you don't know for sure. Council might even vote for it. And you're gonna put $400,000 in there and you don't know for sure it's gonna be in or not, so I'd rather leave it as it is. Like you got it here, with a deficit in general funds, and you want to rob Peter Paul down at the bottom here, something like that. Okay. That's my opinion.
So would you like to have a first reading on the proposed budget? I need to know.
Is there any way that we could try to see how we would fund this first before doing the first reading?
Well, and if I could, the reading of the first budget is not a commitment by any means, because we don't have to vote.
No, but it takes 2 readings, so if you change the first reading, you will have to have another first reading.
But if we don't have that first reading anyway, we still gonna have to have a reading.
Exactly, and you'll have to have a special meeting.
You have to have a special meeting.
So that's why I'm asking if we're going to do a first reading on the 9th, or if you're not.
Well, what the finance, you know, we go too fast. The finance committee had a meeting to discuss and Fred made a recommendation I think it was last week.
They may not know till after the finance committee whether they're ready.
What
for
use
first
you having a finance, you got a finance committee meeting, you're not gonna discuss finance business? I have a problem with that. That's what the committee's supposed to be for. That's finance. They're supposed to make a recommendation to.
Well, you could always put first reading on there and not have first reading.
That's what I mean. Put it on there, and then we'll have our finance committee meeting. We can report our results from the finance committee meeting in the regular meeting. If that makes everyone okay with voting on it, we'll vote on it. If we don't want to vote on it, or well, we don't vote, but we don't have to have a reading. If we can't have some agreement to it. I don't think it hurts to put it on the agenda because we don't have to do it. But if we don't put it on the agenda, we can't do it.
It works for me.
And we will have to have a second, because,
Right.
You'll have to have a first reading.
yeah, June 30th,
Right.
you've got to have your budget.
If we don't have the first reading, we'll have to have a separate, we'll have to have a special meeting.
Right,
Which won't be
exactly.
the first time
So
we
we-
do that.
Okay, I just want to know.
But I think we've had this budget and a whole lot faster than we've had in the past, and I think there's been a lot of time to discuss it.
Matter of fact, Mayor, we stopped. Matter of fact, we didn't even go through all the budget. We just, I don't even know for sure we stopped at water. What did we stop at?
For the working session, you stopped right.
We didn't even go through the recreation. We didn't
No,
go
but
through-
then at the council meeting, you had an opportunity to discuss the end, but no one
You
did.
know it.
Well, putting it on the agenda, if you're taking a poll, I don't have a problem.
I will. I'll definitely put it on there.
That's right.
No, sir. It's after. You're next, sir. Tourism Commission. That's right here. Tourism.
Okay, is everybody done with that? Number 2, the Tourist Commission.
Just wanted to let you know, the mayor just received this the other day. That's why I put it on the working session for the agenda, so that you would have an opportunity to look at it, because it does need to be part of the budget. So these figures will be added to the budget, but it's an in and out situation, isn't it, Tracy?
Yes,
Thank you.
restaurant types.
But you do have to approve the budget.
Again, these are some facts and figures, and again, what I want to look at, I think ever since I've been on the council, I want to make sure things are fair and equal. Before we give money to anyone, I want to make sure that the citizens are being treated fairly and equally.
Tracy, could you do me a favor and explain to the new council how this works? This amount of money?
The restaurant types, what happens is the restaurants, if you ever see a receipt, when you go eat at a restaurant, you see your 6% sales tax, your 1%, I think local is how they list it, I'm not for sure. But the 1% goes to the Tourism Commission. We collect it for them, and then we send it to them on a monthly basis.
That's that pass-through you're talking about.
Yes.
That's $500,000 we collect this year? 500,000?
Yeah, it was already in the budget at 500,000. Their budget that they sent over a couple days ago, they estimate 525.
So it's just a pass-through?
It's
We
just a
always had
pass-through. We
it.
don't get anything from it.
We don't add anything to it?
Just a FYI.
Yes.
Just to let you know.
But we have to approve it.
Right, you have to approve, we have to approve their budget. But we give them the money.
Thanks. I can give it to you. Okay.
Anybody have anything else, council members? Larry? Yes, sir. Chief? Ms. Tracy?
I just want to report that June 1st, we did move the payment center CSRs over to the front line. The training is starting. So far, it's gone well. A couple of hiccups, but it seems to have already improved the workload as far as phone calls that we do receive. So far, I've seen improvement. Of course, it's only day 2.
And I think customer service has seen a benefit from it, and the people coming in and getting out a whole lot quicker. Ms. Jessup?
Mayor?
Yes.
I thought of one thing. This is June, so we are into our open enrollment for health insurance. So we'll be meeting with all the employees, explaining the health insurance, whatever changes we have, and explaining it to the new employees so that they understand what their options are. So, and of course, with the city council, it's open enrollment for you guys too.
It's 4 o'clock.
It's 4 o'clock Thursday in the council chamber.
Here?
I mean, excuse me.
Not the conference room.
In the mayor conference.
Finance committee meeting, 4 o'clock Thursday, at the mayor's council. Mayor's conference room. Larry, H?
Unless there's a question.
Okay. I'll take a motion to.
We don't
do
do
a motion.
anything.
It's a
No motion.
It's a working session.
I'll let you try it. I don't have extra.
No, I